I'm Clara Bellew in Blackwood County. Ohio is my home. For 34 years, I've breathed its quiet air and watched its seasons turn. For the last 12, I've been a 911 dispatcher, the last 7 of those on the graveyard shift. My world is fluorescent lights, the low hum of computer servers, and the endless stream of human misery that filters through my headset. Blackwood County itself is a sleepy place, mostly soccer moms and retirees. After 10 at night, it practically rolls over and goes to sleep. The worst we usually get is a teenager who's had too much to drink or a barking dog complaint. I used to be good at this job, used to find meaning in being the calm voice on the other end of someone's worst day. Now I'm just tired, deeply existentially tired in a way sleep can't fix. The calls are just blips on a screen, voices to be processed, categorized, and dispatched. I am a human switchboard, my empathy worn thin, my spirit a flickering flame. It's the only way to stay sane in this line of work, but lately I felt like I was losing even that. Then 3 months ago it started. It was 2:47 in the morning, the deadest hour of the deadest night. A Tuesday, I remember it distinctly. The line lit up on my console, but not in the usual way. No cell tower ping, no landline registered address. Just a raw signal designated unregistered VoIP. Rare but not unheard of, I clicked it open, a mundane act that would unravel everything. 911, what is your emergency? Static. A thick, wet sound like listening to a radio underwater. It crackled and popped, and underneath it I heard a whisper. Hello, can you hear me? It was a child's voice, a boy I thought maybe 7 or 8. He sounded like he was trying to talk without moving his lips. This is 911, I repeated, my voice louder, clearer. I can barely hear you. What is your emergency? The static swelled, almost swallowing his tiny voice. He's back. The man in the mask is back. A cold, sharp chill went down my spine, the kind that tells you this isn't a prank, this is real. Okay, son, where are you? I need an address. Hurting mommy, the whisper came again, breaking with a sob. The static sounded like a swarm of angry insects now. Daddy's asleep on the floor. He won't wake up. My fingers flew across the keyboard, trying to trace the call, but the system kicked back errors. No location data, no subscriber info, nothing. Son, I need you to tell me where you are. I can't send help if I don't know where you are. The old house, he whispered, his voice fading. At the end of the road, please. Then the line went dead, not a click, not a hang-up, it just ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a line of static and terror, and the next it was just a dead channel. Even without an address, the old house at the end of the road was enough. Out on the western edge of the county, there's a long, unpaved road that just sort of peters out into the woods. At the end of it stands one house, a big, derelict Victorian place that's been empty for as long as anyone can remember. It was a local legend, the kind of place kids dared each other to spend a night in. I dispatched a patrol car. My senior officer, a guy who's been on the force since before I was born, came back over the radio about 15 minutes later. His voice was flat, laced with the kind of annoyance reserved for rookies and time wasters. Dispatch, car 12 here, the property is secure, no signs of forced entry. Place is boarded up tighter than a drum. There's nobody here, hasn't been for 50 years by the looks of it. And for car 12, I said, my own voice betraying none of my confusion. Are you sure? The caller was a child. He said his family was being attacked. There was a heavy sigh over the radio. Listen, the dust on the porch is an inch thick. The boards on the windows are gray and rotted. If someone's in there, they're a ghost. We're clearing the call. Tell whoever's playing games to knock it off. I logged it as unfounded and tried to put it out of my mind. A prank. A sophisticated one maybe. Kids these days. I was too tired to care, or so I told myself. But the image of that old house, the child's whisper, they gnawed at me. The monster of the man in the mask remained abstract, but the injustice of the ignored call settled deep in my bones. A week later, at precisely 2:47 in the morning, the same line lit up. The same static, the same terrified, whispering voice. He's in the house, I can hear him walking. This time, I felt a knot of ice form in my stomach. Son, is this the same caller from last week? A choked sob. He has the mask on, the one with the scary smile. Mommy's screaming. Faintly, through the storm of static, I thought I could hear it. A woman's scream, high and thin and distorted, like a sound being played backwards. I'm sending help, I said, my voice tight. Stay on the line with me. Can you hide? In the closet, he whispered. He's coming up the stairs. I can hear his feet. The line went dead. I dispatched 2 cars this time. I told them it was a repeat call, possibly a hostage situation. I didn't want them to be complacent. They took it seriously. They set up a perimeter. They used a bullhorn. They broke down the front door. The result was the same, an empty house, thick, undisturbed layers of dust on every surface. Rotted floorboards, peeling wallpaper, the smell of decay and forgotten things. No footprints, no child, no man in a mask, no sign that a human being had set foot in that house in decades. My supervisor pulled me aside the next morning. He's a large, patient man who has the weary look of someone who's seen it all twice. He told me to drop it. It's a glitch, he said, not meeting my eye. Some kind of cross-chatter from another jurisdiction or a recurring electronic echo. Don't waste county resources on it. If that call comes in again, log it and move on. But I couldn't. The boy's voice, it was too real. The terror in it was primal. You can't fake that. Not even the best actor in the world can fake the sound of a child who thinks his mother is being murdered in the next room. The calls kept coming, every Tuesday like clockwork, 2:47 in the morning. Each call was a slightly different piece of the same horrible puzzle. He's hurting Daddy now, there's so much red. Mommy stopped screaming. He's looking for me, I can hear him opening doors. Every time I sent a car, every time the result was the same. The cops got angrier. I was the girl who cried wolf. My supervisor gave me a formal warning. My colleagues started looking at me funny, whispering when I walked by. They thought I was cracking up. Maybe I was. I started losing sleep. On my nights off, I'd find myself staring at the clock, my heart pounding as 2:47 in the morning approached. The silence was somehow worse than the calls. I became obsessed. During the day, instead of sleeping, I went to the county records office. I needed to know who owned that house. The paper trail was a mess. It had been sold and resold, owned by banks and holding companies. But I kept digging backwards through dusty ledgers and brittle property deeds. Finally, I found it, the last family to actually live there, a deed from 1968. A nice, happy family with a mom, a dad, and 2 kids, a boy and a girl. That wasn't enough. I started spending my days in the library's basement, scrolling through decades of local newspapers on a squeaky, ancient microfiche reader. The stale, papery smell of the archives filled my lungs. I was looking for anything related to the house, to that family. For weeks I found nothing, just property tax notices and school honor rolls, and then I found it, an article from a cold, late autumn day in 1975. The headline was stark: Local Family Slain in Apparent Home Invasion. My blood ran cold. I zoomed in, my hands trembling as I adjusted the focus knob. The picture was grainy, black and white. It was the house. The same steep gables, the same wide porch. Police cars were parked haphazardly on the overgrown lawn. I read the article, my heart hammering against my ribs. A husband, a wife, and their 10-year-old daughter found dead in their home. The cause of death was extensive. The article was vague, using phrases like brutal force trauma. The police report mentioned a possible intruder, a figure a neighbor had seen fleeing into the woods, described only as a tall man wearing some kind of pale, expressionless mask. But the last paragraph was what made me stop breathing. The family's 8-year-old son, it read, remains missing. Police found evidence he was hiding in an upstairs closet during the attack, but the boy has not been found. A statewide search is underway. Authorities have not ruled out the possibility that he was abducted by the assailant. The crime was never solved, the masked man was never found, the little boy was never seen again. I sat back in my chair, the library basement suddenly feeling like a tomb. The static, the whispers, the closet, the man in the mask, it wasn't a prank, it wasn't a glitch. This was a tragedy, unsolved and echoing through time, and I was being called to it. The next day at work, I felt broken. I walked into the dispatch center like a zombie. The hum of the servers sounded like a funeral dirge. I couldn't keep it in anymore. I had to tell someone. I grabbed my supervisor and one of the oldest dispatchers, a woman named Beverly who'd been there for 30 years, and I dragged them into the break room. I laid it all out. The calls, the timing, the empty house, the microfiche article. I showed them the copy I'd printed out, the grainy picture of the house, the headline. I expected them to think I was insane. I expected them to tell me to take a leave of absence. They didn't, they just looked at each other. It was a look I'd never seen before, of a grim, tired resignation. My supervisor sighed, a heavy, rattling sound, and rubbed his temples. Beverly just stared at the article, her face pale. So it started again, she said, her voice barely a whisper. What do you mean, started again? I asked, my voice shaking. What is going on? My supervisor sat down heavily. Kid, he said, and he looked 100 years old. We need to tell you about the man you replaced. He told me the story. Arthur Jenkins, the dispatcher who had my seat before me, he'd been a good man, sharp, dedicated. About a year before I was hired, he started getting strange. He was obsessed with a specific address, the old house at the end of the road. He kept sending cars out there, insisting there was a child in trouble. The patrols always came back. He started pulling old files, spending his days off at the library. He became withdrawn, paranoid. He claimed he was getting calls no one else could hear. We checked the logs, my supervisor said, his voice low and serious. The system never registered the calls he said he was taking. We pulled the audio recorders for his console. There was nothing on them but dead air. We thought he was having a breakdown, stress of the job. My blood turned to ice water. The system. It doesn't log the calls for me either. They just show up on the screen and then disappear. They don't go into the call history. Beverly nodded slowly. We know it's the same. He told us what the calls were about, a little boy, a man in a mask. I felt like I was going to be sick. What happened to him? I whispered, though I already knew the answer. One night, the supervisor continued, his eyes fixed on the linoleum floor. He took a call. We saw him on the console, talking, his face ashen. He was typing a report, then he just stopped. He stood up, grabbed his jacket and his keys, and walked out without a word. The call was still active on his screen, but none of us could hear anything on it. We just saw the open line. Where did he go? He drove out to the house. His car was found parked on the road the next morning. Engine was cold, doors were locked. He was gone. The silence in the room was absolute. We searched, Beverly said, her voice cracking. The police did a grid search of the entire woods, dogs, helicopters, the whole 9 yards. They went through that house from the attic to the cellar. They found nothing, no sign of a struggle, no footprints, no him. He just vanished, wiped off the face of the earth. I stared at them, my mind struggling to process what they were telling me. Why didn't you warn me? I stammered, a raw edge to my voice. How could we? My supervisor shot back, his voice rising with a frustration that had clearly been festering for years. Hey, new guy, welcome aboard. By the way, this console might be haunted and the last guy who sat here disappeared. Don't worry about it. You'd have thought we were crazy. We thought he was crazy until you came in here today with that same damn story. He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto mine. This is what you're going to do. The next time that line rings, you do not answer it. If you answer it by mistake, you hang up immediately. You do not talk to him, you do not engage, you terminate the call and you clear the line. That's an order. Do you understand me? For the next few weeks, I was a ghost myself. I did my job on autopilot. Every sound, every flicker on the screen made me jump. I dreaded Tuesday nights. I drank so much coffee I could feel my heart rattling in my chest just to stay sharp, to stay vigilant. I thought about quitting. I thought about just walking out and never coming back, but where would I go? The image of Arthur, gone without a trace, haunted me more than the child's whispers. My life, my safety, felt like they hung by a thread, and my duty to answer, to help, clashed violently with the primal instinct for self-preservation. I was failing the boy and I was failing Arthur, and I felt utterly alone, trapped in a cycle of fear and helplessness, knowing that the man in the mask, whatever he was still out there unpunished. This personal injustice, the way the system had failed Arthur and was failing me, ignited a cold, hard ember of resolve deep within me. I was tired of being a victim. Then last night it happened. It was 2:45 in the morning. I was staring at the clock, my knuckles white from gripping the edge of my desk. The minutes ticked by like hours. 2:46, my mouth was dry, my heart was a drum solo in my ears. 2:47, the line lit up, the unregistered VoIP. It felt like a physical blow. I flinched back in my chair. My training, my instincts, every fiber of my being screamed at me to answer it. There was a child in trouble, that was the job, but I remembered the pale, haunted face of my supervisor. The story of Arthur, the man who had vanished. You terminate the call. I let it ring, once, twice. The flashing light on the console seemed to sear my retinas. My hand hovered over the button, trembling. I couldn't just ignore it. I had to answer. I clicked the button. 911, what is your... The static was a roar, louder than it had ever been. It was a physical presence in my ear, a wall of noise. And through it, the boy's voice came, not whispering this time, but screaming. It was a raw, ragged sound of pure agony and terror. He's got me. He's got me. Please, he's taking me. Please don't let him take me. Help me. The sound ripped through my professional detachment and tore right into my soul. This was it, the climax. The moment the boy was taken, replaying for all eternity. My hand flew to the keyboard to dispatch a car, a purely reflexive action born of years of training, but I stopped. My fingers froze over the keys. He's gone. This already happened. It's not real. This is how Arthur disappeared. The boy was sobbing now, his screams turning into choked, gasping pleas. Please, you promised. You said you'd send help. Don't leave me. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. I was a 911 dispatcher. My job was to send help, and I was going to sit here and listen to a child be abducted or murdered and do nothing. I'm sorry, I whispered, my voice thick. I'm so sorry. I reached for the terminate button on my screen. My finger was a millimeter from the glass. This was it. I was choosing to save myself. I was choosing to let him go, and then the screaming stopped. It wasn't a fade-out. It was an abrupt cut, as if a switch had been flipped. The roar of the static dropped to a low, sinister hum. The line was still open. Silence. My heart was in my throat. Did I do it? Did I break the connection? Then a new sound came through the headset. It wasn't the boy. It was a man's voice, a whisper just as terrified as the child's had been, but older, hoarser. It was distorted by the same underwater static, the same swarm of electronic insects. It was a voice trying to push its way through an impossible distance, through time itself, and it was a voice I felt, deep in my bones, I should have recognized from an old staff photo in the hallway. The whisper was faint, but utterly, terrifyingly clear. He's here. I froze, my finger hovering over the screen, unable to move. The voice was ragged, desperate, broken. Don't let him take you. Fight back, little one. Look for the silver wolf near the river stone. The line crackled. He sees you through the line. He's looking right at you. Finish it, for all of us. A cold dread, so absolute and profound it felt like death itself, washed over me. This wasn't a ghost warning me of the killer's presence. It was Arthur, the vanished dispatcher, sending a clue, a guiding hand from beyond. He was trying to finish what he started, and he was using me. The man in the mask, the true monster, was still out there, alive, and Arthur's final warning, he sees you through the line, wasn't for me to be afraid, but to understand that the killer was still connected, perhaps drawn back to the scene, sensing the growing disturbance. I slowly, involuntarily looked up from my console, across the darkened dispatch center, towards the plate glass windows that looked out into the night. There was nothing there but the reflection of my own terrified face in the glass, my skin pale in the glow of the monitors, but I understood. The Silver Wolf and River Stone. Blackwood County wasn't that big. There was a legend, an old local tale of the Finch family, wealthy landowners whose sprawling estate bordered the Blackwood River. Their family crest, etched into the stone gates and grand fireplace, was a silver wolf. They also had a very distinctive outcropping of large, smooth river stones on their property, a well-known local landmark. Alastair Finch, a pillar of the community, respected, influential. A young man in 1975, discreetly known for a volatile temper and eccentric behavior but never suspected. Too rich, too powerful, nobody dared to look too closely at the Finches. Until now. I didn't call a patrol, that would just lead to another unfounded report, another dismissal. This required a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. I leveraged my connections, my 12 years in the system. I called Detective Miller, a seasoned investigator I'd worked with for years, a woman who trusted my instincts. I didn't mention ghosts or voices from the past. I spoke about the cold case, about how a nagging detail from the original police reports, a unique pattern on the mask, a specific type of fabric, a strange, almost musical hum a witness reported hearing on the night of the murders, had finally clicked into place. I spun a tale about how my own insomnia had led me to reread the archives, cross-referencing old property maps with crime scene notes. I strategically mentioned a specific type of river clay found at the scene that matched a unique geological feature on the Finch estate. I alluded to an old, discarded mask found by a hiker years ago, stored as uncatalogued evidence that had a faint silver wolf emblem woven into its lining. I knew the system. I knew how to plant seeds. Miller, intrigued, promised to look into the Finch family, to review old files, to discreetly inquire. The very next day, a warrant was served. Forensics teams swarmed the sprawling Finch estate. They didn't find the boy, but they found something else. In a hidden, soundproofed room beneath the old boathouse, nestled among antique fishing gear and forgotten heirlooms, they found the mask. Not the one from the hiking trail that was a decoy, but the true one, carefully preserved. And with it, a small, faded toy soldier, a detail from the original crime scene that had never been released to the public. Alastair Finch, the respected community leader, was arrested. The evidence, long buried, was undeniable. He confessed, a chilling calm to his voice, revealing decades of a carefully constructed lie. He even mentioned being drawn back to the old house, an unsettling compulsion he couldn't explain. The calls from the old house stopped, completely. The 2:47 in the morning slot on Tuesday nights remained silent. I was exhausted more than I had ever been, but a profound sense of justice, a deep, cleansing peace settled over me. I had fulfilled my duty not just as a dispatcher but as an instrument of retribution. I resigned from the graveyard shift, opting for a quiet daytime administrative role. I was changed forever, but no longer burned out. A few weeks later, at my new desk, amidst the busy daytime hum of the dispatch center, my old console, now used by a rookie, lit up. The unregistered VoIP line, my heart leaped. I froze, but then I realized. It wasn't flashing with an urgent call. It registered a single, faint signal. No static, no screams, no whispers of terror, just a clear, peaceful, almost musical tone, soft and brief like a sigh of relief. Then it disconnected. A thank you, a farewell from the spirits of the house, from the lost boy, from Arthur. They were finally free, and now so was I.